At dinner, my uncle humiliated me in front of everyone. My name is Marjorie B. Carlton. Please like and subscribe Honey Heart Revenge. My home is on Shin Street, New York City, New York, in a city of hustle and bustle and broken dreams. I am 30 years old, married to Vicky D. Henry, man whose patience and kindness have been my rock. But sometimes even the calmest seas conceal tempests just beneath their surface, and that Friday became a storm I was ill-prepared to weather. I have been looking forward to this birthday for weeks. 30 was always a milestone, a soft celebration of life and survival, growth, and the hope that life would be kinder than it had sometimes been. Vicky and I had decided to host a small family dinner, one that I prayed would be warm and intimate and full of laughter. My mother was the one who'd helped me plan it. My cousins had promised to come. Even my aunt, with her sharp tongue, had RSVP'd with a brusque yes. I was, to be sure, a little nervous. Family gatherings were always complicated, but I dressed with care in jeans and a pale blue sweater that set off my eyes. My best feature, I'd always believed, my hair swept back and pinned up just so. I wanted to feel special, as though I knew things and existed for a reason that granted me access to the table mattered. Dinner started smoothly. The scent of roast chicken, baked potatoes, and green beans permeated the flat. Vicky had made chocolate mousse that was indescribably decadent, and my mom and cousins were laughing together. The air was soft, almost cozy, just as I'd pictured it for months in my head. That was going to be upset now, though. It began subtly. My Aunt Edith, a woman whose reputation for inspecting others' appearances and behavior predated all memory of my own birth, walked in the door and immediately scanned me as though she were preparing to operate. Her eyes, keen and appraising, ran up and down my attire, my hairstyle, my figure. My response was to smile politely, assuming that she would make some sort of a throwaway comment, something meaningless, a tease that all would laugh off. But what came out of her mouth was pure knives, every one cutting me precisely. "You're nothing," she added, so loudly that the room heard. I froze. The fork I was holding stopped halfway to my mouth. My cousins exchanged nervous glances. My mother's smile faltered. And Vicky, seated opposite me, took my hand under the table, a quiet sign of encouragement. The silence of the room bore down on me. I wanted to respond. I wanted to defend myself. But my voice faltered. I learned just then that words would not protect me from the poison of someone who'd always prided himself on diminishment. I'm sorry. I stammered, simply because I didn't know how to react to such an absolutist, brutal statement. Aunt Edith cackled, a high, piercing laugh that I swear I could hear reverberating off the walls of my house. "You think you're in the right place, dressed like that? You think I don't catch some of that too? You have never been important, Marjorie, nor ever will be." Her words were more than just painful. They shattered the contained walls of self-worth I had built so meticulously. I had spent years building a life of integrity, carving out a space for myself in the world, working hard not to be nothing more than the shadows cast by my relatives' condemnations. And yet here she was. She'd just cut all of that to nothing with one simple statement. Time stood still for a second. My heart was leaping into my ears. My cousin's laughter, the occasional polite cough from one of the guests, even the ticking of the clock on the wall, it all wove together into a bizarre cacophony that made my words weigh that much more. Vicky squeezed my hand. My mom pursed her lips together in a hard line, the silence of shame and anger and helplessness. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flee. But instead, I said something I didn't even know I had in me. I took a long, shuddering breath and lifted my chin. I looked her straight in the eyes, and I did not so much as blink, even though my hands shook under the table. "You're wrong," I said softly, but with a kind of resolve that even I found surprising. "I am not nothing. I am 30 years old. I've put in the time, I've been in love, and I worked hard as hell for everything that I have. And if you're not looking hard enough, it's still true." Her laughter stopped, and she then stared at me in a way I can only describe as modestly annoyed. But the room had changed. The spell was broken, her mastery of the narrative snapped. My cousins exchanged glances of surprise, some nodding lightly as though they saw the pay dirt for which I was digging. Vicky's eyes glistened with pride. And here for the first time that night I felt a tiny ember of my own power, small, delicate, but unmistakable. The dinner went on, but the mood was not the same. Aunt Edith, feeling that her authority was being undermined, had kept apart and icy, but the others seemed to take my part. My mother poured me an extra glass of wine and whispered, "You did well, Marjorie." My cousins praised my dress, liked my hair, and complimented my smile as if to say, without saying it, that they now actually saw who I was. Later, as Vicky and I were clearing the table, we hugged. "I have never seen anyone stand up to her like that," he said. "You were incredible." I stuffed my face into his chest, a mass of shame and relief and unadulterated emotion. I could see that the humiliation was real and had cut deep. It had hurt very much, but I also realized something else. I was not defined by the pain. I was not worthless in the eyes of someone that bitter and unkind. My life, my love, and my achievements, they did not require her approval. As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't help but think of all the years I had devoted to trying to get approval from members of my family who were unable to look at me and see who I was. I considered the comparisons, the expectations, the overall constant reminder, often not so discreet, of my absolute worthlessness. I realized then that those years of self-doubt had been gifts in disguise. They taught me to be resilient, patient, and true to myself. Great you set boundaries too. I couldn't manage Aunt Edith, and I couldn't alter the toxicity that had shaped her contact with me for decades. But my reaction was something I could control. I could pick when to respond, when to shield myself, and when to leave behind her judgments without holding onto them. For weeks after my birthday, I often thought of that night. I kept a journal about the emotions, about the shame, the defiance, and finally, when I came to accept. And so I shared my fears, my ongoing insecurities, and my dreams for the future with Vicky. And something extraordinary happened. With each subsequent telling of the story, the sting of humiliation went away. My voice grew stronger. My confidence returned. And the memory of that night, which started out as an axe wound, grew gradually stronger. I also started to see the subtler dynamics in my family. Aunt Edith, for all her blind incivility and harshness, was but a suffering middle-aged woman with the twist of an embittered heart turned in upon itself. They weren't the truths about me. They were the projections of her own unhappiness with herself. Coming to realize that didn't excuse her actions, but it freed me from its being a personal attack. I felt I could have compassion for her without sacrificing the boundaries that kept me well. And eventually I found ways to take back the narrative. At later meetings, I refused to be muted by disrespect. I fought for myself, sometimes softly, sometimes hard. And each time, the room reacted differently, in surprise, admiration, or grudging acknowledgement. I learned that to stand up for oneself is not just offensive, but transformative. It shows others how to look at you, and it shows yourself that you are deserving of being seen. I discovered the importance of celebrating life on my own terms, too. And now birthdays, Family dinners or get-togethers are not simply occasions for me to receive love, but stew on what love and respect looks like for me. I began having small, purposeful events where only those who celebrated and honored me were invited. I learned the worth of a support system and the fact that you have to impress whomsoever doesn't understand your value. And in the end, through it all, Vicky was my indomitable partner. His avuncular support, listening without judgment, and faith in me became the basis, once more, for my self-confidence. Because I realized love, like real love, doesn't shrink at humiliation, it expands and seals. In retrospect, that birthday dinner, excruciating as my mother made it for me, was a turning point. It showed me that self-worth is not something you inherit from what others think. It is generated by resilience, reflection, and the power to claim your rightful space in the world. It was a reminder that standing up for yourself, even in the smallest interactions, is a revolutionary act. And it reminded me that even in life's moments of greatest pain, there are small lessons hidden within the suffering, and those small lessons have the power to pull us out. I am Marjorie B. Carlton. I am 30 years old. I live on Shin Street in New York, and I am married to a man who loves me and respects me. I have been humiliated, but I've made it. They say I'm nobody, and I show myself that I'm everything. And from now on, I will never let anyone, even family, dictate my worth. Because the truth I've found, that redeems rather than destroys, is simply this: I belong. I am enough. And I will never forget it. Thanks for watching.